Okay, and in the last class, I hope you remember, we have been dealing with global climate change adaptation and mitigation. We have looked at different strategies for mitigation, for example, two or three strategies. And I hope you have some background of what we have done in the last class. So in this particular class, I am going to do further about mitigation possibilities. I don't know, it is most of the time this is coming up. There are a lot of mitigation possibilities, and we are taking only some of them. And this is one of them. Sorry about it. I'm sure you would have heard something about carbon crediting possibilities. What is carbon crediting? Now, crediting really is a word which is very much used when you are dealing with money. And actually, in mitigating carbon dioxide, there is money also involved. So today we are going to see something about that. And what is exactly crediting? It's a way of sequestering carbon and thereby underwriting the cost in suitable projects. Okay, let us try to understand that. That is, we are sequestering carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and thereby we are underwriting the cost. What is underwriting the cost? We are actually putting the cost of that project in a suitable project. So sequestering carbon involves a bit of expenditure, and this expenditure is not to be borne by the person who is going to do it, or the institution or the country, but it is going to be underwritten in suitable projects, which is using mostly international money. So that is actually carbon crediting. Now, the projects can be, the projects can be in any of the following. Say, I have already told you that energy production is the one which is really going to be most carbon, giving out most of the carbon dioxide, because they burn a lot of fossil fuels in that, like coal or petroleum. Second is transport. That is, for transport we use a lot of petroleum products. Then waste handling, burning of the waste and all these things, you know, we actually produce a lot of carbon dioxide. Then industries need a lot of energy. Indirectly, it is energy production. Then in agriculture also we need, because we are in an age of highly mechanized agriculture, and everything will need to burn a lot of fossil fuels. And finally, the most interesting part is forestry. Of course, I am going to talk more about the last one, that is the forestry, so that it is this is the most important thing that we have to study. Now, can forests sequester carbon? I think this question has been answered before also. An increase in the carbon sink, that is plants and forests, can sequester carbon and lock it up above ground and underground through the process of photosynthesis. I have told you that in photosynthesis, what exactly the plants are doing or the trees are doing, is to take out the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and with the help of the sunlight and also the water that is coming from the soil and the chlorophyll in the leaves, they can manufacture the food material. And this is stored above ground, that is in the shoot, and underground in the roots, and this is through the process of photosynthesis. I think this we have seen a bit of detail in the last class. Now, in this slide, I am going to explain to you how much CO2 is removed by a tree from the atmosphere. Now, I mean, we are talking much about forestry and its ability to sequester carbon dioxide and all that. Then, and I think every year during the World Environment Day, they are saying that we are planting new trees, isn't it? And what for? One of the main reasons they are giving now is to sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, that is to prevent climate change. And so this is something that we should know, how much carbon dioxide can be really sequestered by a particular tree or any tree. So let us listen to, please listen to that very carefully. A teak tree, we all know about, as Indians we know all teak trees, it's a very common tree all around India, will achieve 1 cubic meter of wood in 30 years. If you plant a teak tree, we assume, or by some research work, it has been shown that it will achieve 1 cubic meter of wood in 30 years. Okay, now 1 cubic meter of teak wood is equal to 650 kilograms. The density, that is the volume, that is the volume is multiplied by the density. The wood density of teak is 0.65. So 1 cubic meter is going to weigh 650 kilograms. Now, what is the carbon content of wood? It is 50%. It is generally taken as 50%. It may be varying in different species or different trees within 1% only. So we take the carbon content of any wood as 50% of the weight. Now, therefore, 1 cubic meter of teak wood is equal to 325 kilograms of carbon. What does it mean? 1 cubic meter of teak wood is equal to 325 kilograms of pure carbon. That is 650 divided by 2, that is for 50%, we get 325 kilograms of carbon. Now, 325 kilograms of carbon is equal to 325 multiplied by 44 by 12. Now, what is this 44 by 12? 44 is actually the molecular weight of carbon dioxide. 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atom together will comprise 44 is as the molecular weight. Now, what is 12? That is the atomic weight of carbon. Okay, so 325 kilograms of carbon is to be multiplied by this factor, and we get 1192 kilograms of carbon dioxide in 30 years. So see how we have worked it out. Yeah? For making 1 cubic meter of wood by a teak tree, during the period of 30 years, it will take in 1192 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So, annual removal of carbon dioxide, roughly we can say an average annual removal, may be better term, 1192 divided by 30, that is the 30 years, and we get 40 kilograms. So a tree is actually consuming 40 kilograms of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year and making its leaves and wood and roots and all the parts of the body. So this is the average annual removal of carbon. I mean, during a very young stage, it may not be removing this much, But an old stage, it may be removing more than 40, but it is the average, you should know. So this is actually the potential for a tree to sequester carbon dioxide. So you can imagine we have a plantation of teak. Say, for example, Kerala has 75 lakh hectares of teak plantation. And each hectare is containing around 250 trees. So you can see how many tons and tons of carbon dioxide is actually removed by the teak plantation alone. Not only teak, the whole forest, the entire forest, the entire plantation, the entire plants that we are planting in the soil, So they are removing actually such a huge amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year by the process of photosynthesis. And that is why there is very good potential for developing projects for carbon crediting in forestry. I hope now you understand the real fact. Now, what is the final outcome? Is there a market for carbon? Can you sell this carbon or carbon dioxide which you are sequestering in plants or any other means? Is there a market for carbon? Yeah, there is a market for mitigating carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions. Now, let us see the details. This can be made into CERs. What is CERs? Certified Emission Reduction. This is carbon crediting. So simply we can get certificates by an organization formed by the United Nations, and that is called the Certified Emission Reduction. How much carbon dioxide we have sequestered in a particular project. It can be an energy project, which is maybe establishing a dam, maybe establishing a windmill, any of these things, or even forestry, by establishing a huge plantation. So this is actually the carbon crediting. Now, what is the mechanism? The Kyoto Protocol. As you would know, Kyoto is a city in Japan, and it is there that this particular organization of the UN formed a protocol signed by almost all the countries of the world, and thereby an opportunity to trade with the CERs. So now this next question is, once you have the CERs given by the UN organization, what are you going to do? According to Kyoto Protocol of the UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. It is this organization of the UN which has actually set right the Kyoto Protocol many years ago, and it gives an opportunity to trade with the CER. What is trading with the CER? You should understand this. Say you are taking the share of a company, for example. Let us assume that you are taking the share of Reliance. What is the advantage? You pay some money to the company dealers and take a share. Okay, maybe the share is worth 1,000 rupees. Okay, what is the advantage? The advantage is that when the Reliance company is going to perform very well, you can get a higher price for that share you have taken. The 1,000 rupees share you have taken may go to 1,100 rupees in a year or so. So you are getting a profit of 100 rupees in 1 year for spending 1,000 rupees, isn't it? That is a share market. So in this particular case also, there is a share market, but a share market separate from the other one, it is actually a carbon trading market. So the purpose of carbon trade is to reduce anthropogenic emissions and save mankind from the global warming and climate change phenomena. Now, when I have said this, people might think that everything is related to money. And this carbon is also related to money. Not always, The purpose of this is to help mainly developing countries to underwrite the cost, as I have already told you. Underwriting the cost of a project so that you earn some money in that one. Say, for example, you have a community in India, a very poor community in a village, and they have a land. Say they have got 1,000 hectares of land around them in which they are staying, which is not used for any other purpose. Say, for example, somebody from outside the country pay the money to develop a plantation there. This has been done in India. That's why I'm giving you this example. And these people will look after the plantation. And when a particular age comes, say, for example, it is a eucalypt plantation, after 7 years, they can cut the wood and sell it to a pulpwood factory. So these 7 years of growth of the eucalypt, they will calculate how much carbon dioxide has been sequestered by these plants during these 7 years. And they will pay this particular community that much amount as the price of the CERs which they have been issued. I hope you understand this. If anyone doesn't understand, please tell me, okay? So, this is the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This was formed in 1992, and they came with the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. So what is this Kyoto Protocol exactly? We should know a little bit about it. Emissions in the 2008-2012 period extended till 2020, that is till today, till end of, by December, should be reduced by 5.2% compared to 1990 levels in the Annex 1 countries, mostly industrialized countries. I think this needs a bit of explanation because you may not have much background with this. I will try to explain it. What exactly is Kyoto Protocol? Say, for example, UN asked all the countries to assemble in Kyoto and put before them this problem of emission of carbon dioxide and the resultant climate change. So they were asked that they should reduce their emissions in this particular period, that is from 2008 to 2012 and now extended till 2020 December. So they have to reduce their emissions by 5.2% compared to excuse me, 1990 levels. That is, what was their emission in 1990 level? They should reduce that level by 5.2%. If they don't reduce, what will happen? The UN has made all the industrialized countries, that is, they are called the Annex 1 countries, to sign this Kyoto Protocol, by which they agreed to this. I hope you understand it well. So they are bound to follow the UN directions according to Kyoto Protocol. That is a 5.2% reduction. And they are doing it now. Now, how do they do it in their country? The developed country, if you are running an industry, for example, or any institution which is actually carbon intensive, you will have to pay a carbon tax. We don't have it in India, fortunately, because we are not in the Annex 1. We are in the Annex 2. So all those who are running industry and other carbon intensive organizations will have to pay a carbon tax. So that is how they find the money for it. Understand? Now, what is the purpose finally? Stabilization of GHG. GHG is greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere with specific attention paid to food security. So there are some riders for it. We have to pay attention to food security. It should not disturb the food security of entering into this agreement. Okay. There is absolutely no food security because these are all the industrialized countries. They have plenty of food. Ecological systems. It should not disturb the ecology of that country in any way. If you enter into it, it won't, because mostly these are green technologies. So it won't. Third, sustainable economic development. It is there that there is a lot of disagreement. What is sustainable economic development? Suppose they are introducing this carbon tax. That means the productivity and the profit of these companies are going to come down in developed countries. So that means that there is going to be less employment in those countries. So economic development is going to be affected. It is giving this reason that the United States never signed this agreement, the Kyoto Protocol. And there are a few other developed countries also which did not sign the Kyoto Protocol, giving this as a rider. Hope you got it. Now, Kyoto Protocol as of today, it is going to be over by December, but still we have to know about it because it is current, Next year, I may not teach much of Kyoto Protocol if it is not going to be extended further. 192 countries have ratified Kyoto Protocol as of today. Ratified means that they have signed. But lately, Canada and Russia have withdrawn from the treaty. US never signed. Now, Canada and Russia have also withdrawn after signing. India signed the protocol in December 97. And India ratified the protocol in August 2002, and Kyoto Protocol came into force in India from 16 February 2005. So we are having projects of this kind based on Kyoto Protocol in India. Now the Kyoto Protocol acknowledges two ways of reducing GHG emissions. One is internal measures in each of the Annex 1 countries. They give a lot of laterality for the countries who have signed this protocol. Now, in Annex 1, in each of the Annex 1 countries, that is, these developed countries can reduce the GHG emission by, for example, use of renewable energy. Say they can establish solar energy plants instead of thermal plants for the generating power. Now, reduction of private transport in cars. Now, what the many developed countries, especially US and Europe, what they have done, reduction of private transport in cars. They have made many public transport system more efficient. And at the same time, they have resorted to another thing, sharing the car. Say, 4 or 5 people staying at a particular place in a complex of flat. They will go to the office almost in the same area. They can identify that and they will share the car. People will travel together instead of each one taking his car or vehicle out. Understand? So, internal, excuse me. So, this is actually an internal measure. And this is all calculated, and then they can get a reduction in the GHG emissions. In GHG emission, and then thereby carbon tax. And second is by implementation of flexible mechanism. Some other mechanisms have been actually given. We are going to see that now. The following 3 flexible mechanisms are defined in the Kyoto Protocol. What are these flexible mechanisms? Joint implementation. What is joint implementation? Joint implementation simply means that 2 countries among the developed group. Say, for example, Germany. Germany can go with France and have a joint implementation. They can have a project which is between them, which is common to them, and they can implement that and reduce their emission. Then international emission trading, that is, says, for example, France has got a excess emission of carbon dioxide, let us assume. Say they are emitting 100 million tons of carbon dioxide every year. Now, according to the Kyoto Protocol, probably they have to reduce it by 80 million tons. So 20 million tons they have to reduce. Now, how do they do that? They can go for international emissions trading. For example, in India, we have a mechanism, that is, we have a project for sequestering carbon dioxide. So we get emission certificates. Now, this emission certificate can be bought by the French company or the France, and then they can account for their emission that way. So their emission reduction is actually in a foreign country. And at the same time, the credit is actually going to be received by France. I hope you understand. Now, clean development mechanism is a similar mechanism, just like this one, and where emission trading is there. And we will see a little bit more about clean development mechanism, or the CDM. I will explain it by this particular map further. I have made this myself just to make you understand things. Say, for example, 10 million tons of CO2 emissions per year is actually given by a company in Germany. Let us assume that it is Mercedes-Benz is producing 10 million tons of CO2 emission per year. This means that they will have to pay a huge amount of carbon tax in Germany. Okay, so to avoid that, what they do? They are trying to find a sponsor. They are going to sponsor a solar power plant which will give an equivalent amount of power. Say, for example, they are using power which is resulting in this CO2 emission. So they are going to sponsor a plant, for example, in Kerala or Tamil Nadu or some other state in India, and they are going to produce this much amount of power here. So what is the advantage? India will get carbon reduction certificate, emission reduction certificate from the UN. Because we are getting CER from the UN for a plant which is sponsored by Mercedes-Benz of Germany. I hope you understand that. Now, what are we going to do that? Now, we are going to sell this emission trading certificate to Mercedes-Benz in Germany, and they will produce it there, and they will get carbon tax reduction exemption. So India will get carbon emission reduction certificate, and Germany is benefited. Now, so what is finally the whole benefit of the thing? India is benefited by a solar plant which is producing power for us. We don't have to sell the power to Germany, okay? And for that, we get a emission reduction certificate from the UN. And we get money by selling this to Germany. So is it not a very attractive thing? So we are actually reducing we are sequestering carbon dioxide, and we are making money out of that. Instead of this solar power plant, it can be a big plant. Although there are many problems with that, which I will explain to you. Now, so far, many such projects have been registered. You know, there are so many fields where it can be done. Energy distribution, 0.16% of the projects. Afforestation and reforestation, 0.76% of the projects. Energy demand, 1%. So, excuse me. Manufacturing industry, energy generation, metal production, transport, fugitive emission, mining and mineral production, chemical industries, agriculture, waste handling and disposal. So you can see that the maximum projects have come in energy production, renewable and non-renewable energy. 73% of the projects are there. But in forestry, you can see that only 0.76%. It is very difficult to develop projects. Whereas here it is much easy. We can set up just a windmill. We can set up a solar plant. You can build a dam which will be generating hydroelectric power. So it is easy to account things. Whereas it is very difficult to account in forestry and many other things also. That is the reason. And distribution of issued certificate emission by host party. Which country has got the maximum certificates? Say, who has got the highest number of certificates? 59% of the certificates, that is almost 60%, has gone to China. The next, of course, comes India with 13% and others 10%, Korea 8%, Mexico 1.5%, Brazil 6.5%. So this is how the different countries have gone into that one. So these are all the countries which are eligible for developing projects. Now, we will look at this particular thing, AR opportunities. What is AR? AR is afforestation, reforestation. I have told you the difference. Afforestation is foresting a land which had no forest before, and reforestation is where the forest has been removed or degenerated, we are reforesting. So these things are there which are eligible for certified emission reduction. What are the opportunities in India? We have got enormous degraded areas, forest and non-forest. It is estimated that you can see how roughly the amount has been given by even government data. We have somewhere in between 66 to 130 million hectares in India, which are degraded areas. This can be reforested or afforested depending upon what type of land it is. Now, second is potential activities. Mixed species plantations, assisted natural regeneration, farm forestry, commercial timber plantations, fruit tree orchards. So they can all qualify for these projects. We can have mixed species plantation, then assisted natural forestry, everything. Then developing community-based CDM projects, a means of diversifying the livelihood base of low-income communities. I have given you an example. We can develop such projects in villages, involving the poor villagers. They can develop plantations and they can get the money from these CDM projects of the UN. Okay, now I am not going much detail into how we develop these projects and all that. If there is time permitting, I will maybe doing that. But instead of that, now I would like to talk to you about the second option given by the UN. So the two options have been given for reducing carbon dioxide. First is mitigation and second is adaptation. Mitigation, we have seen a number of them. What are the different opportunities for mitigating carbon dioxide? Now let us look at a few adaptation strategies. Now in this one, we should know about two things, UN RED and RED Plus. Now what is this RED? That is UN, of course, United Nations. Reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. That is RED. Reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation is an effort to create a financial value for the carbon stored in forests offering incentives for developing countries to reduce emissions from forest lands and invest in excuse me, low carbon paths to sustainable development. So let us first understand this part, red. That is, we are trying to reduce emission from deforestation and forest degradation by providing incentives to developing countries. That is what the UN wants. Now, say for example, in India, we are of course a developing country. We are maintaining a lot of land as forest. Now, maintaining a lot of land and wild areas as forest means that we are not allowing our farmers or our industries or our entrepreneurs to take in those land because we care about our ecology. Just for the sake of environment, we are actually keeping many of these natural forests. You should know that. We are not getting any income from it. We are not selling the wood from it. We are not selling any animals from it. So this is so we have to a country like us, there are many other developing countries which are doing that way. So it's an ecological service where a country is providing. So the UN is now thinking about giving a financial incentive for it. Now, RED Plus goes beyond deforestation and forest degradation and includes the role of conservation, sustainable management of forests, and enhancement of forest carbon stocks. Excuse me. Now, RED Plus goes even beyond that. What is going beyond that? Includes the role of conservation, sustainable management of forests, and enhancement of forest carbon stocks. So, new plantations, agroforestry, and sustainably managed plantations and forests, these are all going to be paid by RED Plus Fund. This program supports 64 partner countries, including India. So, there is a fund available with the UN, and we have got quite a bit of that fund in India, shared with 64 other developing countries. So this is what you read. So I hope now you understand a little bit about mitigation and adaptation. This is adaptation actually. It is not mitigation. We are not doing much like the previous one, there we have to develop a project and all these things, but here we are not doing anything that. We are just maintaining what we have and taking money from the UN for that. So this is an attractive proposition. So what is finally more important in adaptation which the UN is asking? UN is calling for a lifestyle change, a total lifestyle change. What is that lifestyle change needed? The current Western culture puts too much emphasis on personal immediate consumption and not enough on long-term planning. Now, it is actually very philosophical also. Now, look at the Western culture. In fact, most of us are also attracted to the Western culture. What is the reason for it? There is emphasis on personal immediate consumption. We generally have an idea that in Western countries and in Western culture, there are no shortages. We get everything for consumption. No shortages. And this is what everyone wants. That is why people with very high degree, very high qualifications in India, they migrate to US, Europe, Australia, all these places. Isn't that the reason? We actually expect a better standard of life, although not a better quality of life, as I have told you before. So We get everything. So what the UN is asking now, we should change our lifestyle. Excuse me. We need a change in our lifestyle. That is, this lifestyle will need to be changed. This use of modern gadgets initially improved people's lives in Western Europe and elsewhere through guaranteeing a good food supply. But in the last few decades, many things suggest a society in decline. These are all UN ideas, not my ideas, not my philosophy. What are these society in decline? Surveys have shown no increase in happiness despite increased consumption. In the Western countries, although the lifestyle is attractive for us, please don't think that the happiness is always there, despite increased consumption. Prison populations are at record levels. In India also we can see this now trend, Crimes are increasing in the society as we are economically developing. Haven't you noticed that? Everywhere it is now, very common now. Lot of crimes. Prison population. Then obesity levels are rising. People are becoming very fat. And very unhealthy also sometimes because they eat a lot of food, because they have plenty of things. Divorce rates have risen. Very true, isn't it? The family setup is really falling away in the Western society. And we are also in India, we are adopting that, blindly adopting that because it is a Western way of life. We think that it is superior. The economy has become dependent on debt. What is that? Yeah, we want to borrow and spend as much as we want, then putting the country in debt. Crores and crores of rupees each state in India is in debt now. So we should now be moving to a sustainable way of living. That is, ways of living that are sustainable in the long term. So this is actually sustainable development. We should go for a sustainable way of living. Sustainable includes the concept of ethical. That is, treating others as you would like to be treated yourself. Since unethical ways of living are not sustainable in the long term. Understand? So we have to be sustainable in our lifestyle. That is, we should be, what is the meaning of sustainable? That we should be able to sustain it for a long time or carry on it for a long time. And it should be available for the future generations also. So our consumption should be that way. So the UN has introduced another term to help you with this, and that is called the carbon footprint. How big is your carbon footprint? So how do you, what exactly is carbon footprint? It is actually the amount of carbon dioxide or equivalent greenhouse gas which you are emitting for your living. Sorry. What does it mean actually? Say, for example, I am using a car and for all my travel, okay. And maybe you say that I travel by car around 50 kilometers a day. And every month I go to USA or Europe or Australia just for a tour. So I am flying by air. And I eat only Western food, That is, in the morning I have only bread and cornflakes. And noontime I will have some roasted meat and some other dishes. which are baked in the oven, and not kani, which we usually have it in Kerala. So we will have I will have a lot of these things, not the local food. I get only vegetables which are flown from northern India to south, and I don't eat only any of the tropical vegetables like vandakya or pavakya or kovakya or any of these things. So what am I actually doing? My carbon dioxide emission is increasing every day. And you can calculate it. How much carbon dioxide you are actually emitting for your daily life or your annual life. You will see that there are people, big industrialists, big people, VIPs, who will be going to tons and tons of carbon dioxide. But a poor man in India living in a village will have hardly a few kilograms of carbon dioxide for his living. So who is more sustainable and friendly to the nature? I don't have to tell you. So this is actually the carbon footprint. So you don't expect to make a big carbon footprint. Try to get a small carbon footprint. You can calculate your carbon footprint if you go into this website, carbonindependent.org. So when you get time, you can actually go through that. I don't want to, it will take some time, so I don't want to do it now. You can do that. You can take down that carbonindependent.org. So you click on that, and then they will give you some guidelines how to calculate your carbon footprint, and you can do that. Footprint average per person, tons per year in different countries. In USA, for example, an average footprint of an American is 20 tons per year. And you see, India, it is 1.2. So 20 Indians can live with the supplies and resources of one American. I hope you got it. So this is how we calculate the carbon footprint. Now the sustainable number they have given as 1.5. You should be reducing it less than 1.5. India, we have only 1.2. Tanzania, it is, you can see, it is only 0.1. And world average is 4. Ours is less than the world average. But unfortunately, development is always considered based on how big is your carbon footprint, isn't it? The economic development of a country is actually calculated based on this. If you have a big carbon footprint, it means that you are a developed country, isn't it? Your gross domestic product, GDP, is very high. So since you have got a big carbon footprint, naturally your GDP can be also very high. So this is the advantage. Now we come to another thing. I have told you that the Kyoto Protocol is about to be over by December of this year. Now, what is the arrangement by 2021? It is for this that the Paris Agreement has been entered. This is again another agreement formed by the United Nations. And it is 168 parties have ratified. Parties means countries. And of 197 parties to the convention, of the 197 who attended the UN conference, 168 have already ratified it. They have signed and agreed. On 5 October 2016, the threshold for entry into force of the Paris Agreement was achieved. Paris Agreement entered into force on 4th November 2016. The first session of the Conference of Parties, serving as the meeting of parties Paris Agreement, took place in Marrakesh, Morocco, from 15 to 8 November. So it is an agreement which was formed in 2016 for establishing another mechanism for reducing the carbon dioxide. Now, why not continue with the Kyoto Protocol? You should know that America never signed Kyoto Protocol, and many developed countries have started withdrawing. So it was necessary for UN to find an alternative because the emission is increasing and climate change is happening. So they wanted to make another mechanism, and Paris Agreement is nothing but that. What are the main features? I think I will stop here because the time is up, and I will deal it in another next class, because you have to know a little bit more about this one, not just brushing it off. So in the meantime, I can give you some chance for asking a couple of questions if you like. Okay. How was the class today? Would you like to make some comments, or you have some questions or some